All right. You with me, Aaron?
I'm here, ready to
All
go.
right. Here's how I used to do this for years. Welcome to the SuperFly Coaching Podcast. I am Adam Zucco, your host. I am with Aaron. Aaron, who the fuck are you? Why are you here?
Yeah. Why am I here?
Yeah.
I'm just a protege of Adam Zucco's training, right?
Right. Here, let me introduce you. You know how kind of okay looking chicks will hang out with like an uglier chick to make them look better.
Where this is going.
As I'm slowing down, I'm hanging out with Aaron just to make me feel like I'm still doing all right. But anyway, so Aaron, seriously, all seriousness, who are you? Why are you here? From your perspective, and then I'll kind of brag on you a little bit.
Hey, no, I appreciate you being here or let me on here. So I would say I'm a washed up, college baseball player that's turned his passion for athletics and competition into the world of triathlons, right? And so I would say as I am slowly transitioning and getting older in my years, I used to get really into weightlifting, bulking up, thinking that's really what I needed to do in order to pick up chicks or just quality of life, right? And so, but the reality is, I think at 190 pounds, about 4 years ago, I think I looked down and I had a dicky do. And so
at least you can still see it.
I think it was on the cusp. I mean, I think it was truly one of those where my stomach stuck out further than my dicky do.
All I'll say is this: a farmer keeps his best equipment under a roof.
I appreciate that. So, so who am I? I think that's the realization where I needed to change something, right? And so, I was the strongest CrossFitter. I prided myself in being a hard worker in the gym, but really, I wasn't happy. And so, the transition to the world of endurance sports, I am giving this a whirl. 3 years in, every day I'm getting a little bit faster. So here we are.
Well, that's not completely the story, but I'll say this. So I met Aaron, and in all seriousness, what I thought would be interesting was the podcast has taken a bit of a hiatus. Obviously, there's been not a lot of content out there, especially during I don't know if you knew this, Aaron, but I guess we had a pandemic or something. So there were some races canceled. There was a lot of confusion. I think a lot of people were lacking motivation, and I'll be honest, as I always am, even I was, to continue with all the facets of doing the podcast and all that. And I met Aaron, who has been training for a couple of years. The first couple of years probably were okay, but I think we realized straight away that we could make some pretty major improvements. And I enjoy talking to him. And so one of the things that I really want this podcast to be, we used to say in the opening, like, you provide the passion, we apply the science. 100%, we could probably still go with that. But really what I want the podcast reborn to be is about training, about motivation, about helping people get the results that they're after, and most importantly, banter. Because if I think back to all the times that I've done training and listened to podcasts, I like things that give me some information and some food for thought, but I like to laugh. And I usually like to escape in the podcast and kind of be engaged. And I personally like to enjoy listening to people who think and challenge my thoughts and make me, fun stuff. So I met Aaron, who is currently on a path to try to qualify. So we're going to put that out there. And I thought that this would be cool because, one, you're a good conversationalist, at least in my opinion. You're motivated. You're on a path that a lot of people are on, where they're trying to improve and kind of see where they can go with the sport. I think that the pandemic has, for whatever reason, made people rethink their position on sport and maybe their goals. And some people like you have come out and thought, like, you know what, this is something that I feel like I need in my life and I'm going to go after it, which is cool. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about your journey, because I think a lot of people will appreciate and empathize with that. And then if I'm totally honest and totally exposed on my side, and we've talked about this, that the embers are definitely still glowing. And every single time you challenge me to go do an Ironman with you or do something, I still want to do that, the competitiveness and the competitor in me. However, I'm at a place in my life, at least currently, I've learned not to ever say never, but at least currently my thoughts are triathlon is still a foundational part of my life, but it's one of the things that I'm doing in my life. And whereas when I was qualifying every year, it was the thing that I was doing in my life. And that's the two perspectives that I thought we could bring to the podcast.
Absolutely. I mean, there's going to be a day, Adam, and probably quicker than later, that I'm having to do 90% of the pulling on our rides, and I fear it's coming earlier than later down the road. Especially, I mean, as you're slowing down.
That's true. And once you're finally done pulling around my wife, which once you can keep up with her, then you can step up to my baseline. So,
you're saying I have 2 bike links to go? Is that what you're trying to say?
Dude, I'm telling you, like Tanya. So I always get, it's like the times get, I think it was 15 or 16, one of those two. She won Wisconsin Ironman. So we had her being coached, because I really didn't want to coach my wife. I just wanted to be her husband and be there for her, but they kept screwing her up. And so finally I'm like, let me, come on, I got it, you know? And so she won her age group by 30 minutes. She got second overall at in Ironman Wisconsin, came off the bike 30 minutes in front of second place, which is insane. But she's a beast, dude. Like we went out there and yeah, I'm not training like I used to, but we went out and I was doing some intervals and I was like testing myself, you know, and if I'm totally honest, at one point, she hasn't been riding it basically at all because she broke her collarbone, you know, and I couldn't ride her off my wheel. I was like kind of impressed and pissed at the same time. Speaking of impressed and pissed, did you get that zit on your neck just for this podcast? Or
I think it happened about when I went
swimming
and got out of the pool. I mean,
you did not get that from swimming. You're just trying to... Okay, so that leads me into the whole thing. I think Aaron has the ability and willingness, because honestly, as people come to me and they want to qualify, most people, quite frankly, don't have the willingness or ability to do the things that are required to do their goals. If we're being totally honest, so that's one of the conversations.
And that's a lot of people. I mean, that time management's a real thing.
Totally. 100%. I get it, you know, but I also know a lot of fast triathletes that eat their dinners at Whole Foods at the sample aisle because they have nothing else in their life and they have no relationships and they have no income and they have no bank account. So, you know, that's not for me. Yeah, exactly. So, but all teasing aside, Aaron, and I'll tell him this, and you could throw your wash in with him when he swims, at least a few months ago. So if you need some laundry done, just throw it, just chuck it in the pool when Aaron's doing some laps. So his major thing is the swim. Actually, his major thing was the swim, bike, and run a few months ago. But when we started working together about 7 months ago, your bike and runs, dude's coming along. No shit. Like, yeah, it's coming along, you know?
I mean, there's no doubt, Adam, you know how to make people faster, right? And when it comes to biking and running, swimming is a whole nother animal, which I'm battling with daily. So let's, as often is the case, I have no idea where the podcast is going to go, but now I do. As you've been starting down this journey, what has been the biggest awakening for you? What are the things that you weren't expecting that you now realize you have to deal with? And how have you handled those things? I think two elements. I think number one element that I wasn't expecting was the difficulty of time management, right? I think that's a real thing. If people want to be successful in this sport, and I think at least 70% of them are still having to battle with having a day job, right? So how do you manage that day job and then have time to train and train enough that it's going to be a competitive level, right? So that's the first realization that I struggled with and I'm doing better with. Secondarily, on top of that, though, I having fun and training hard, those are two different things, because training hard, I can train, but then training hard and still having fun and looking forward to putting myself through that punishment once, twice, 3 times a day, or 4 hours a day, day in, day out. You know, initially get into this thing, I can handle it. The realization of really what it's going to take to be good is there's some hills and valleys, right? And there's ebbs and flows in this deal. And I think that's where I struggled initially and I'm getting better at.
How are you getting better at it?
I think you got to see progress, right? You got to
Right.
see
I
some
agree with
type
that.
of progress, and progress can't be measured on a weekly basis. It's got to be more quarterly, race wise. I think that's a good test of your athletic ability and your training that you've been putting in, which has been really difficult for a lot of us athletes over the last few years. But you know, the more and more time that we can get out on the race line and compete or train with people that we've trained with over time and see us do more pulling, run faster, hold ourselves up there to a pace in which we weren't able to do in the past. Those are the small victories that we need to be successful in this sport, to go out there and give you the drive to train on your own. This is a very individual sport.
Yeah, I agree.
Different from anything that I ever grew up with. I mean, I was a baseball player. I mean, this team was the philosophy, right? If and this is very much and those struggles.
Do you like that better? Because like you could rely on your team in that situation, right? But this is kind of like the spotlight's on you, you know?
No, I think you know, part of this is I think that's what I like about it. It is all up to me. 100% of my success is determined by what I put out on it, and that's what I get excited about, right? And so I'm fully accountable for it, my success and my failures. But let me hang on. I need the right guidance first and foremost. If I'm given the right guidance, and I've been doing this for 3 years, and I've had a few coaches prior to Adam, and so I think just as important, with the right guidance, putting in effective work, that can be fun, and seeing the success, that's fun, and that's where I is key.
Yeah, I love it. What I think people can learn from you, and when I look for athletes that come and they want to achieve the things that are high goals that you have, which don't apologize for them. Like, and I've told you, I don't know if you're going to get there, but I think that you have the makeup to get there. And so I look for mental capacity, physical ability, and willingness to grind. Like I talk to my athletes all the time, especially when they come in and we're talking about somebody who's on a track who wants to see what they're made of, right? So, and we can talk about another track too, which is totally fine. But my responsibility and my job as a coach, so like you have all this data, and so on my website it says like really good coaches understand science and are based in science. Like, okay, great coaches know how to take that science and apply it to the art of training. Which is why, like, same thing with surgeons. You can teach so many surgeons the facts about an injury, but there's a reason why really like high performing athletes go to a specific surgeon who understands their situation and how to apply that surgical technique to that specific situation, given all. And so that's where I think that I differentiate. But one of the challenges is teaching athletes how to be what hungry feels like. So like, and I think I might have told you this, if not, but the listeners, I'll tell my athletes, I'm like, if you all know what hungry feels like, but if you had to explain to somebody else the different levels of hunger that they might feel and when they should not have to really eat, maybe if they're on a diet, but what a certain hunger pain is that maybe they should eat, and be able to articulate to them exactly the sensations and feelings that they're going to be going through and when they should interpret, when they should make that, it's hard, you know? Absolutely. And so, and so being able to absorb that information, you have to have the science, but you have to be able to have good conversations around what did that mean to you? So it looks like you're going to say something, so go for it.
No, I wasn't going to say, I think there's so many different angles that you can take that, Adam. I mean, your experience, I think when we haven't talked about it yet, but you know, I was facing injuries upon injuries upon injuries there for, and I think that's kind of what brought the two of us together, and your ability to relate, identify, come up with a solution, at the same time delegate responsibility to somebody of knowledge or expertise of those areas is, I think, prideful upon your part, but also where you come in as a knowledge expert, a guru in the industry. You've seen it all, you faced it all, and you're willing to acknowledge and work through those issues. You know, there was times where I was dealing with Achilles issues, and you know, we needed to address still being able to get the fitness level in, because I was mentally going to go insane, but physically didn't want to fall off, right? and the treadmill work at 8% incline, and the benefits of working these alternative muscles. And that's just where your knowledge comes into play. That's where you're this guy goes deep, and he's been faced with every vertical.
Oh, dude, it's you too. I mean, honestly, like, so Aaron did his first Ironman in Cozumel, and my biggest challenge was telling him to don't go too fast, because you were seeing so much growth.
Yeah.
Such period of time. And a credit to you. I've been to Kona 9 times. I can't honestly tell you how many Ironmans I've done, but I feel like I've achieved a pretty high level. And there was probably a 7-year period I didn't miss a workout.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Again, going back to triathlon was the thing, and now it's a thing in my life, right?
Yeah.
I'm like, Aaron, yeah, I'll go do Ironman Cozumel with you. And I bailed. I'm like, fuck this. I'm not doing it. And then I got reback again because American Airlines loves me because I think I spent $6,000 on flights that I can only get if I go to Cancun, so that are non-refundable. But that goes back to that embers. Yeah. But you never deterred. So to be fair, it wasn't never our goal that we were doing Ironman together. It was yours and someone else's goal. And so I jumped in on that goal, but you stayed the course. You were the only person. And that goes back to that mental fortitude. I was just watching a story last night. I couldn't sleep. So I was watching, Netflix has a series called Untold or something like that. And I was watching about a tennis player, Mitch Fish. I want to say he used to compete against Roderick, who at one point and so these guys grew up together, and they were actually at the Saddlebrook Club in Tampa. And, they would have Sampras come, and all these, like Agassi, they would come train. And so they would train together, and they made each other better.
God, you're going back. When I think Agassi, all I can think about is those Reebok pumps, the first Reebok pumps that come out.
Dude, I saw the K-Swisses on there. Like I had those K-Swiss for a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm like, this is my guy. This is my time. So you also bring the younger generation to my podcast. As you see, I got the gray. I got the gray now. But he was doing what I think a lot of people are doing, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with this. This is kind of what I'm aspiring to. And actually, I'm starting a whole new program to teach people how it's like, great, you've climbed this high success, high achieve, must do Ironman, must go to 70.3 worlds, you still want to do that stuff. You still want to be fit, but you realize like, you're not going to be faster than you were like when you were 20 and 30. It's like you really trained hard. Like if you're coming down, which most athletes do, how do you deal with that? How do you balance that? How do you still incorporate triathlon in your life? Anyway, he was laying in a hyperbaric chamber at one point. He was like, I don't know, 130th in the world or something like that, which is not shabby.
Gosh.
And so Roderick was saying, at 17 or 18 years old, if someone's got it, and they never change. And he was saying Fish was one of the only people he saw as he was approaching 30 made the change. And he said he was laying in a hyperbaric chamber. You should check this one out on Netflix. Like when you're doing your next ride, it's awesome. I got halfway through it and fell asleep, but dude made a change, and he's like, let's fucking do this. Like, I'm going to go all in. I'm going to make my goal to get to the world final, which only 8 tennis players in the world get And so he went all in. He went all in, and it just shows you like what you can do when you commit. And it doesn't mean you have to go all in like that, but when you commit, and like one of the things that I've sometimes struggled with through this is clarity, right? So like you've seen this. So it's like, am I an Ironman competitive age group triathlete, or am I not doing? And so wherever your goals lie, whether it's trying to qualify or whether it's trying to find triathlon balance, you need clarity. And once you have that clarity, you kind of have peace in your mission. And then once you have peace in your mission, you can kind of measure progress, as you were saying.
Manage your progress, checks and balances, right? I mean, I think, and to piggyback on what you're saying, it's okay to change your goals. But for me, I'm very goal oriented. I think if you set a goal, and for me, if it's writing it down, and I set, personal, professional, and career growth goals, objectives for my year, for me, if I set those, I have to hit them. It's not an if, it's not hope. it's due in its every aspect of my life personally. And so, that Ironman here last year in 2021 it was real. It was,
How do you measure, how do you decide a goal is going on your goal sheet? Because if you're going to hit them, or you're going to beat yourself up if you don't, because you want those goals to be a stretch, but you want them to be achievable, right? So how do you decide what goal makes the list?
Well, I don't think there's anything with big, hairy ass goals, right? And so those would drive us to make us even better and push ourselves even further, right? So, from going for me and only of doing, a single half Ironman in my lifetime to 2021, I got to think of what year we're at. Right. I'm going to compete in my second half Ironman and first full. Is a big objective here in year 2.5 of working out in this world. So let's just talk about that one. For me, it was big. It was a high objective. Many people probably would say, let's be realistic with yourselves, but you surround yourselves, I think, with like-minded individuals that can elevate your game. And by doing that, the reality of you executing well becomes very clear, right? And I think that's where you and I have actually connected over time is the realization that I needed to pick up my game and surround myself with stronger individuals to be able to execute at that level was what I needed to change in my own life. So, and I think you mentioned something here earlier that these goal-oriented things like a full Ironman year 2 of doing the sport is tough. But and we may very easily get blurred by injury and dragged down. But the realization, if you find yourself with people who have the knowledge to hold you accountable, keep the sport fun, right, rework your efforts to accommodate anything that you're facing, you can do anything you set your mind to.
I agree with that. And one of the things I tell my athletes during one of my, my nuggets of speeches is expect speed bumps, right? So it's like, if you are driving through a shopping mall and your wife runs in or your husband runs in and you're waiting for them and you're doing laps, and you're trying not to have to park and you're trying to pick them up and not, and you're looking in the store and all of a sudden, boom, you hit a speed bump. Like, it's an extremely jarring situation. It can be very disruptive. But if you know the speed bump is there, even at the same speed, you're mentally and physically prepared for the speed bump, and it's not a big deal. And so that's what I think you're good at, to the point I'm also going to brag on you. You had this goal. And again, going back to this tennis thing that I was watching, did all this training. He said he was 206 pounds and he was going to try to lose 10 pounds, right? Yeah. So he gave up alcohol, whatever, all this other stuff. And so he was talking about how he would train and finally, he couldn't become fit enough. And so eventually he got on the scale and he was 170 pounds. So he lost 36 pounds, right? Yeah. And so he had done all this training, just like you had done all this training to go to Ironman Cosmo. And you get there and he gets this thing. He said, I don't know why I picked this tournament, but I picked Newport tournament. And I told myself I had to win this tournament. And he found himself in the first 3 games down, 0-3. Yeah. And he's like, fuck, I just totally went all in, and he could. And so anyway, he course corrected, but you went there and your bike, which happens a lot when you get a new bike, the bolts were tight, obviously in training, because we got you a new bike. And then for whatever reason with traveling, they just became loose, right? So your front end was basically coming apart underneath your arms. While you were doing it. How did you hold yourself together in that and not totally shit the bed?
I got to give credit back to you though. I remember you saying you only can manage the things which you can control. And those are just things that I couldn't control, right? And so, but I could address and just fix and then move on. And right. I secondarily to that, I think, as you said, had fun. Right. And if I would have beat myself up over that, the 11-hour day would have come, would have had 0 fun. I wouldn't want to do this sport again. So, ultimately control what I can control. That kept on being repeated in my head. and go out there and have fun. And, ultimately average just around over 20 miles an hour with 3 different pit stops. And yeah, I lost 25 minutes of time, maybe 30, but that's okay. I mean, ultimately, I was prepared. My legs were prepared to put in the work. And
I love it, dude. I'm honestly, like we tease, we joke, this is what I want this to be, but I'm also extremely impressed with your drive. You have a great marriage, you have a great business, you have great goals. And I think that those are exactly the people out there that I like. Even when Ben Canute, when I was training him for the Olympics, and when he was coming out of high school, he had the opportunity to go train at the Olympic Training Center and kind of skip school or go to college with them. And he got accepted into the honors program at Arizona. And I'm like, dude, you're one bike crash away from being irrelevant to the world. Have balance, have good relationships, go get your degree, and then triathlon becomes so much more fun when you have that balance in your life, in my opinion, And so I'm extremely impressed. I haven't always been great at managing that balance, if I'm being totally honest, but you're coming into that in a really wise and mature way. So
we say that though, Adam, and I think the piece here, consistent theme I hear when talking to other triathletes is we are wired different. And you say you won't always have a balance. The average person would think you and I are absolutely, well, you obviously crazy, but would think I'm crazy as well. I mean, I got into sport because to lose weight, but the realization is it's a sick addiction. You and I are in phenomenal shape. You look at us and you can see muscles and abs and things like that. But to me, in my own head, I'm fat. And so it's a true sickness to the point where it can, I mean, prior to this, 3 years ago, it's something that same sickness was in me. But in reading, different books of different professional triathletes, I mean, that same feeling of weight loss or still feeling fat is a daily occurrence in their life. And I acknowledge it. I know that it's there. I battle with those demons on days that I don't work out or miss a workout. Eating right, nutrition, and those are all things I think you and I have talked about. We work through, and ultimately, shows up on race day is because we've executed and done those workouts. But I don't want to I'm not wired the same as the average person out there.
But I'm going to push back on that a little bit, because you're right. But it's just like, I'll talk to athletes sometimes like, oh, and you know what? I can't do a 3-hour ride on, here we go. I want to qualify for Kona. I have 4 hours a week to train. Okay. So like, I'm gonna make the most efficient use of your 4 hours, it's like probably not gonna happen, but so having realistic goals, going back to the goals, is important. But also too, it's like and they say, well, I can't work out on Saturday for more than 2 hours because my spouse will get upset. Awesome. But I'm always in my back of my head, like, would they otherwise have you do nothing? Are you gonna not go golf? Are you not gonna go play tennis? If you're not doing this, like, you're literally just gonna be, it's either you're doing triathlon or you're sitting at your home ready to do honey-do lists like all day. Like, it's like, it's like, so it's like, so I get that you have to do balance, but also too, like, and so one of the tips that I always tell my athletes that are struggling with this is, and I've told you this, sit down with your significant other people in your life and say, here's my calendar. What do you want? You have first dibs on all my time slots, whether it's like a weekly schedule, whether it's a vacation schedule or whatever. But understand, whatever you don't claim, I want permission to manage the best that I can to go achieve the goals that are important to me, with the freedom to do so. So take whatever you want off the list, but then left is what I get. That's my budget to go do with what I want.
I think we need to follow up with one of our podcasts be with our partners, and they could actually.
Oh boy. Well, they're better looking. They definitely have the face for podcasts.
I'd be interested to hear. Your wife is an endurance athlete. Mine, the real questions of what she thinks about our lives now versus the
My
previous
wife's, because I've been married 3 times. So you want like all 3 of them on here?
Yeah, let's get those. You'll have an audience in the back.
I told you I used to be out of balance. We'd have to have the gallery view on Zoom.
Yeah. But I think, Adam, it constantly comes back to time management, right? Even on a weekend. And what is the difference from a really successful triathlete who hits is probably in an average athlete? I think the successful athlete hits all their workouts, right?
Yeah.
Always. And the other ones hit 70, 80%. Why? It's time management. Do you have the discipline? You can get in and have a family and have 3 kids and get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and done by 7, right, and then get your second workout in during lunchtime or after work. I mean, you could structure, and then on the weekends, are you willing to get up at 6 a.m. and go to bed and finish your workouts by 10? I mean, you can get those things done. It comes down to time management, but also getting your spouse or your partner on board.
Well, commitment too. So like, to interject, I always tell people, because people who usually miss their workouts also eat like shit. And I'm like, it doesn't cost any time to eat right. Anytime. That's a decision that you're making to blow your diet. And if you're tight on time, you really need to dial in your diet, because that's going to help big time with your results, and so it just, if that's your goal, right? But like, going back to what you were saying too, and I know we're kind of hitting up against 30 minutes, so we'll kind of start wrapping up. One of the things that I'm passionate about, and I'm also going to be, is what you said was really key. It is hard. I used to weigh 246 pounds.
Yeah.
There has never been a day in my life, even when I went 9-16 in Kona, that I haven't looked in the mirror and thought, I'm kind of fat.
Yeah.
And then now, as I can't do, or honestly don't want to do, at least today, the triathlon intensity and training that I was doing, I'm afraid I'm going to get fat. I'm afraid that I'm going to slow down. Yeah. I'm afraid that people are going to judge me. I'm afraid of name it. I'm just being very vulnerable. But that's where I also have a program now where I'm helping people deal with that. And it takes more of a holistic approach, and sometimes medical. So like, Tanya can analyze, like, what's your diet? Do you have food sensitivities? Like all this stuff. So it's like, with less time, but it's a real struggle, and so one of these days, I want to, not today, but I want to ask you, like, how'd you stop playing basically professional baseball? I know you weren't a pro, but basically at the level you were is kind of the same, and like to walk away and say, okay, I'm done.
First off, it was injuries, right? And I think that's, it was, I remember I couldn't even throw a baseball to, if you use a tennis court, I couldn't even throw it over the net. And so it was realization that my body's breaking down on me. So that, number one. And then 2, it just wasn't fun, right? I think when you lose that passion to go out there and put in the work that it's going to take to maintain yourself at that level, I wasn't willing to do it. And a lot of that is what we talk about here. I mean, the small little details that it takes of foam rolling, stretching, right, doing your core work, doing your strength work. I mean, we need to find time for that, because my body was at once at an elite level and then started breaking down. And I wasn't willing to put in the small little 30 minutes of work that it needed to do in my free time to maintain at that level. And, so at 40 years old, I'm finding that passion again, and knowing from previous lessons learned that I got to do all the small things to stay out of the doctor's office. Right. And so, you can either, so your path is, you can either become a pro triathlete now, or you can start selling your farts in a jar like that. Gosh, she's raking in money too, man. I mean,
25K a week, dude. Yeah.
Unbelievable.
You could be a billionaire this month.
I don't think we're competing for the same audience here on this podcast, but that'd be interesting to hear if we have 1 or 2 consumers of her product. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, we'll see if you get sponsored by Fart Jar or whatever.
Yeah. Well,
yeah. Oh my gosh.
So no, I think we all as athletes, love the competitive nature the sport brings, but it's easily lost because it's an individual sport, right? And we all got our battles that we deal with, whether it's work, family, our bodies. but then also just staying disciplined to your week, your month, your year. And I look forward to kind of talking more about how ways that we overcome that and drive success.
We're going to get into it. We're going to wrap for today, but I love this, dude. This went exactly the way. It's your first time. To be totally honest, I told him we're not doing any prep. I'm going to hit record and we're going to go. Yeah. I'm always committed just doing raw, whatever.
Yeah, you are. Yeah, you are.
Anything kind of Speaking of which, we're going to resurrect with comments like that. Don't be that guy. So I'm going to challenge you next year. In fact, I'm going next week. So yeah, my example of one of my don't be that guy, or I guess, I did that 10 years ago. Now I should say, don't be that person. Don't be that person that at the grocery store has to use the dividers no matter what. There can be a country between you and what they're doing, and you could be buying oat milk and they could be buying vodka and limes, and they will and your oat milk could be in a basket on the tray, clearly fucking yours. And they're standing at the back, and they will reach over you to grab the thing. And I've even had the lady, or who I said,
checkout girl,
yeah, checking me out, and she was done with the person in front of me. My stuff came to that sensor, which stopped it. To which she reached over, grabbed the thing, and put the fucking divider in front of her. And even though mine was next up, she was done with the previous transaction. Then she finished, gave them their change, and picked that thing back up and put. It's like, what is going on?
All the Sarasota listeners here, if you see Adam at the grocery store, put a divider front, back, and center.
I've had pics of that on Twitter and stuff where people are like,
please record it. I want it on video. This could be.
Oh my God. Yeah. So I'm going to challenge you. So I'll give you one other one that comes to mind. Is like when you're backing up in a space, and it's like, you used to not have always I'm old enough, we didn't always have back cameras. Like, I don't know if you could drive without cameras because you're younger than me. But as you're backing up and someone sees you backing up, it still tries to go around you it's like, dude, you see me backing up, like, what is the problem? Like, clearly I don't see you. So,
it's probably that they just got done running, or, 26 miles, and they have to eat at a Whole Foods and get their food.
Ironically, it was in a Whole Foods parking lot that I'm thinking about this exact situation.
Yeah. Yep. And so it's the triathlete lifestyle that doesn't have good time management skills. That's the person that can't be patient enough to wait for you to pull out.
All right, man. You're on deck next week, so I want to hear your don't be that person.
All right, I got it.
All right, man. Thanks, dude. Thanks for joining me. Let's do this again next week. I'm going to hold you to it.
All right, looking forward to it.
All right,
thanks,
brother.
Adam.